Welcome to Business and Technology in Bermuda. Our goal is to meet with the leaders and thinkers shaping our island's economy to discuss what it really takes to build, scale, and sustain a business in Bermuda today.
Thanks for joining me. Obviously, as we spoke pre-loading live, super happy just to talk about crypto space, business in Bermuda, your experience here. You're Bermudian, you're Canadian as well. My wife's Canadian.
Working on the Canadian passport, but yes, Bermuda born and raised.
That's good. Newly engaged.
Married actually.
Married, sorry.
Married in October.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you.
I met your missus once, I believe.
You did indeed, yeah. Kara sends her love to Bermuda.
I know your team pretty well, and you've been really active in the local space with cryptocurrency. Probably, if anyone asked me who's the preeminent people in the space here, your name is like top of my list.
It's very kind of you.
Maybe because no one else is pushing digital adoption here. So anyways, let me just give you a chance to talk about your background, coming to Bermuda, working in the space here, and we can go from there.
Yeah, happy to give the rundown. So as you said, Bermuda born and raised, spent the first 18 years of my life here and moved away as Bermudians do for university up in Canada. Actually moved up to Montreal for McGill University, graduated from there, and then I've worked in the tech space, mostly in Montreal for the last decade and a bit. And in 2018, the opportunity arose when Bermuda rolled out their digital asset legislation, DABA 2018. And essentially, Bermuda became a hotspot for digital assets to be regulated, licensed, and to become a bit more of a global phenomenon than they already were. And so the opportunity really was, why on earth would we, as a Bermudian Canadian consulting firm, not be involved in the space? And so at the time, I'd been working with a couple Canadian consultancies. I met a few great business partners along the years. And in 2019, Penrose Partners came to be. And so over the years, we've done a lot of different things, but essentially we are a digital asset consultancy that advises public and private enterprises on digital asset adoption, strategy, business development, and essentially trying to be the people that figure out the signal from the noise. And so I think for a lot of Bermuda as well, there's been potentially the wrong impression of what crypto, what digital finance, what all these things are. And we really try and focus first on education and the utility, right? It doesn't really matter about what this technology does if you can't make it the average person understand how it helps them. And I think that's what we do really well.
So we back up a bit. I think a lot of people know cryptocurrency through Bitcoin. I was, super early in the space, probably 2010, something like that. I first bought into Bitcoin.
Well,
my big idea back in the day was find super cheap power, build a mining farm in like Manitoba, because, looking online, I was like, oh, the power up in the hydro space was like 3 cents a kilowatt hour. So
yeah, certainly won't be in Bermuda with your Belco bill.
No, absolutely not. So a lot of people probably got interested in crypto from an asset space, from a hedge space, from basically gambling in the market space. And I would imagine that's, the average person who might, listen to us opine about technology and cryptocurrency would think about that. But obviously, as the years marched on, some other cool things started happening. I remember one of the first inklings I remember thinking that crypto was going to be much bigger than just, currency exchange was on Shark Tank. Kevin O'Leary was talking about digital assets and turning buildings into sellable, almost like shares, where you could go buy a chunk of a building and buy a fractional ownership of it. So, and you mentioned DABA. So I'm super curious, like, where are you seeing, and maybe break down a bit, what is in the space that is not cryptocurrency, but crypto adjacent, crypto related,
right?
And talks about like digital assets.
Yeah, of course. And, I think it would be remiss to not start with a huge shout out to Premier Burt and the work he's done since 2018. I think as a person born or raised in Bermuda, it's great to see the head of my country having gone out and really pushed for something that at the time, as you say, was seen as a bit of an outside industry, something that's potentially a little hard to understand, a little bit sketchy even, and really pushing for the legitimization of the space. And I think a lot of it now is, instead of using, things like cryptocurrency and others, which folks do associate with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, I think a lot of the focus has been on, as you were saying, digital finance. right? And it's the same way I'd make the comparison with same thing that we as, I'm born in the 90s. I grew up with the end of the era of the fax machine and grew up really in my teens using email. And so for me, the thought of having to go back to using faxes is absolutely insane. And so similarly, I think now as we move into this world of digital finance, a lot of the payment applications specifically are actually able to basically make this as easy as sending money should be as simple as sending an iMessage. It really should be as simple as sending, I owe Artie $20 for a coffee at Baru. Here is his address, done. In Bermuda, especially here, we are unfortunately subject to huge fees on the banking side. From the perspective of the small business owners, you can get, if you're lucky, 3%. If you're unlucky, the equivalent works out to 7 to 8% on some of these small businesses with flat fees and otherwise. And that's a huge tax on their business. And what we've now been pushing on with a lot of the digital asset side is the payment applications for digital finance mean that for less than a cent, you can send any transaction between any two wallets. Very simply, you can think of a digital wallet, same as you have your physical one that holds your money. Very simply, I know that this is Artie's wallet. I can send money to Artie, costs less than a cent. And all of a sudden, we don't have to wait T+2 business days for things to settle internationally as well.
Right. So it's not just obviously a buy and store, buy and speculate.
Exactly. It's everyday usage, 100%. And
now it's trying to figure out a way for obviously we're both in the business space. I pay 30 vendors a month.
Mm-hmm.
How do I do that quicker? How do I do it faster? How do I lose less margin? I pay Visa, MasterCard, Discovery, American Express 2 to 3 or 4% per transaction. Plus they do a carry fee of 25 or 50 cents per transaction on top of that.
Probably a convenience fee for your convenience.
Sure.
Exactly.
And usually, unless, although to be fair, you do have the rewards cards that try to give you some cash back, or I have the Butterfield airline miles thing, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
But really, at the end of the day, those transactions could be pretty expensive, especially for bigger businesses. And also for wire payments, which, we do a lot of wire payments overseas. They're horrendous.
Yeah.
Like it's 48 hours for clearance. I don't know why. As far as I understand the SWIFT system, which is what banks use for exchange settlement between each other,
mm-hmm.
the SWIFT system should be instantaneous,
mm-hmm.
and we wait 48 hours for clearance. So where I'm assuming you're kind of going with that conversation is, trying to get businesses in Bermuda to start trying to settle with each other, going to a small business and tapping my phone and buying a coffee or paying for government fees right from my cryptocurrency wallet, instant settlement. Is that one area of adoption that we're looking at here locally?
Pretty much nail on the head for one of the pieces that we've been focusing on. So we've onboarded probably close to 20 to 30 businesses locally. To name some of our friends over the years, Ashley's Lemonade is a great example. We've worked with Ashley now since earlier this year at the Digital Finance Forum, where we brought her and several other local vendors on to get their wallets set up to accept USDC or digital dollars. And essentially, it's just a one-to-one digital representation of a US dollar. So now, Ashley, instead of being cash only and having to worry about reconciliation, carrying the cash, figuring these things out, or alternatively, using her credit card fees and getting charged those percents you mentioned, she can now basically accept that for close to free, right? And the other piece I'd say, just to your last point, is the cashbacks and everything are fantastic for you and I as consumers. But for every business that's accepting these, it's a reason a lot of folks don't like using Amex. Because although great, we can earn some points, at the end of the day, that's being paid out from the businesses. And so someone's got to pay for this right now. And so I think the other thing to consider is, on average, most businesses are spending about 4% on some of these fees.
Sure.
And if on $1 million a year in revenue, that's 40 grand that is going out of the island. So for most of the small businesses, if they're not clearing $1 million already, they're probably spending an awful lot more than that just on the fees involved with running the business, rather than focusing on what they do well. So the thing is that on the one side, digital finance payments are able to make things a lot more seamless. And as you say, a lot quicker. You can basically settle. We could do this on air right now, and it would settle pretty much in under 5 to 10 seconds on the slow end, versus, doing a credit card settlement, hoping that it works properly, making sure that the bank accepts it, et cetera. And the other one that you mentioned is, if you're paying international fees, for example, my mother lives over in Scotland. You know, if I wanted to send her money through the traditional banking system, I'd be lucky if it clears
Western Union.
Yeah, Western Union,
Pretty old school, but still used.
It still works, but I'm paying for those, I think it's what, $20 flat fee, or if it's HSBC charges just for moving my own money between my own accounts, it's a nightmare. Versus my mother can have a wallet address that I can send it to from anywhere in the world, and it clears in under 10 seconds for less than a cent. And I think that's the big thing as well, is looking at Bermuda's population for, a bunch of my mates are Portuguese, sending money back to the Azores. All of a sudden, that removes all of the friction with them being able to send money to family overseas. And same thing for any of the expat community here. I think it suddenly becomes a real viable option for them to save on the fees that are, they're already getting rinsed by these international firms. I think this opens up a whole new world for them to realize this is the future.
Right.
And we do believe that. And I think to your point on, it's not just this idea of cryptocurrency, of buying and speculating on this. These are stable assets. This is a digital dollar. It is one-to-one, backed by cash in a bank account that can be verified, and it's just a digital representation of that. So it's just finance brought into the 21st century.
It's super easy for you and me to just go way to the stratosphere with this stuff because, I'm a rank amateur. This is your day job. I would want us to start back a little bit. So we had Bitcoin that came out. 2008 was the white paper.
2008, I think Halloween 2009, possibly.
Something like that.
So, 2008 Halloween was the white paper, and the 2009 was the first kickoff.
Right, like the first block that was settled. I'm not going to bring us so deep, although I'd love to, but just for a minute. So we have Bitcoin as the originator.
Mm-hmm.
We have nowadays, which is a fairly new invention, stable coins,
mm-hmm.
Which, as you mentioned, are pegged to a currency. Typically, right now, they're pegged to the US dollar, but
right. Same as the Bermuda dollar, for example.
Right. So the US dollar and the Bermuda dollar are pegged, although for whatever reason, we pay some kind of settlement fee at the bank. I don't know why. But let's kind of unpack your traditional cryptocurrencies, which would probably, back in the day have been Bitcoin, Ethereum. Dogecoin came out as a meme coin back in the day. There was 1,000 other meme coins. There was Monero.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to go into all that complexity versus, what we have today, digital assets and stable coins.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to take a stab at maybe trying to break down some of it. But as you say, look, I think there is the whole world of cryptocurrencies, which is generally outside of the existing regulated financial ecosystem. The reason being is that they're built in a way that it's meant to preclude being owned or controlled by any single entity. So you take a look at the US dollar. The US Federal Reserve basically manages the entire thing with a vast network of intermediaries. But at any time, there is someone on the end of that that's actually controlling where does the flow go, what happens here, what money is issued, what goes on. It's all very human-centric. Now, that can come with some pros. It comes with over the last couple decades, centuries, however long we want to go back, comes with some issues as well. And really, I think where the big discussion came around in 2008, 2009 was as the banks at the time were getting bailed out during the 2008 recession, and after we'd seen a huge amount of greed from the banking sector that had resulted in many millions of people being affected, losing their homes, etc., and the banks were receiving bailouts from the governments, there was certainly a lot of anti-bank sentiment and a lot of feeling of this money is just being manipulated by the powers that be, right? And
one of my favorite movies from back then, The Big Short.
Big Short, classic.
Kind of unpacked a very highly leveraged, very Las Vegas-like way.
It's a great scene.
Taking, regular everyday mortgages and how do we get as much money from those mortgages as humanly possible. So,
yeah, I think they brought Selena Gomez on to show out the scene, but the whole thing is basically, look, you owe me $20, and all of a sudden a banking institution is saying, we're going to place a bet that will that money get paid back? And that becomes a product, which then gets traded between financial institutions.
And re-leveraged again.
And then it's like, okay, will Artie pay Sean $20? Yes or no? And then there'll be an additional piece, which is, will he pay it within this time frame? And this just stacks and stacks and stacks.
On the side.
Exactly. And so all of this was happening in the background, being hugely leveraged up. It was just money being shuffled between different accounts. None of it was almost real at this point.
Sure.
But it was such a system that was being gamified to the point that when the house of cards came crashing down, it was regular people that were left out to dry.
Right.
And I think that was the piece that the sentiment at the time then was there has to be a better way. And so enter Bitcoin. And so this is 2008, as you mentioned, the white paper or the initial, here's potentially how a system could get built that's better. The 2008 white paper was then released. It was released by the pseudonym of Satoshi Nakamoto. And essentially, we don't know who Satoshi was. We don't know if there are many, many theories. I won't get into those here, but essentially this person or this group of people decided, what if you built a currency that was able to not be controlled or influenced by any particular group? And I'll vastly oversimplify a lot of this here, but essentially, Bitcoin was created in a manner that allowed for there to be a decentralized network of computers that anyone could contribute their computer to that would help support the growth of the network. And it meant that instead of it being only Artie's currency is then now controlled by Artie, it's actually there are 100 people, all of whom are involved in the network, and each of them has an equal say in how this currency is run, right? So it was being brought on as a new idea of what if money was democratized, which had never been done before in human history. And so essentially the way this works is that in a system of most cryptocurrencies, if you are a network that is looking to have a decentralized control, meaning no one person can shut this down, essentially any transactions on the network are broadcast out to everyone. Every computer can take a look at them, validate that they're legitimate, and then collectively they contribute to the computing power that then solves the block. And essentially, when you solve a very complicated math problem, the block is then...
You're rewarded.
You're rewarded, exactly. Right. You receive the reward.
Somebody, a computer...
computer solves the program, and then essentially...
Some people were trying to solve these on paper back in the day.
It was a different world, right? But essentially, the system broadcasts a very complicated math problem out. Your computer tries to solve the problem. If you solve the problem first, you are then rewarded and receive, at the time, your Bitcoins, right? And then that was the way that the system would agree on what was the collective process for basically making sure that no one entity could control it. Because you could solve the problem, I could solve the problem, anyone was able to basically contribute to this. And if you were able to actually solve the problem first, great. You now receive the rewards. And all of those transactions in the last 10 minutes would all get validated through your block. And hence we now have this chain of blocks and hence blockchain.
And the big thing that I think Bitcoin was trying to also solve was first bring some faith back in a monetary system.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just go out and make, of course you could, make these gigantic bets in the secondary financial markets. But also, I remember a lot of the angst back then being Bitcoin was going to be a finite amount of coins. There's going to be 21 million Bitcoins ever produced.
Yeah.
And then I'd happily opine for days about, because I was one of those guys. I am still one of those guys who believes that a financial system that can endlessly print money is not good financial policy.
Right, and that's maybe just a point just to say is one of the big things that Bitcoin said was, there's a few, right? One was the decentralization piece. No one should be able to control this system, right? It should be open for the people. The second part, as you say, was it was a capped system. So there's only ever, mathematically, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins, right? There are, as of today, about 19 million of them have been created. We know mathematically that the rest of these will be created over the next X number of decades. And it's very much a programmatic system. This isn't something someone can come in and say, right, I want to print more money because I need tax rebates, as we've seen with the US dollar. This is something that everyone can count on the money supply being very clearly laid out. And that meant that instead of the monetary system being held by a few folks, again, it comes back to why does this matter? Well, if the US economy is $100 million and you own $1 million of that, you own 1%. Right, but if the government then decided, right, we're printing another $100 million, all of a sudden the money that you hold is actually then represented as a smaller percentage. So now you own 0.5% of the money supply for the same amount of goods and value that's in the economy. So it means that anytime there's more government printing, the money that you, I, and every average person holds is then worth less.
Increases, of course.
And that was the principle of Bitcoin, saying, what if there was a way that you could avoid being basically knocked out of the market due to factors beyond your control? What if there was a better system for money? And so That was the early days of this. There were many other cryptos.
That kicks off the tech.
Yeah, that was the tech itself.
The tech really exists in this cryptographic.
Right. And it's called crypto for context here. It's crypto because that equation we talked about that's being solved.
Cryptography.
That's just solving cryptography, right? It's cryptographic
code-breaking, people who like watching History Channel.
Yeah, it's like if you've seen, the Enigma machine, right?
Back in the World War II with the Germans and the Allies.
And that's essentially, you can think of it as a complicated math problem that your computer solves. It's the same basis as well of modern day security. So in the same way that people think cryptocurrency is this new invention, it's the same way that you and I have encrypted messages in WhatsApp.
I can send email, no one can read them.
Exactly.
Other than the NSA.
It's just using cryptographic protection in order to keep money secure. And that was the first time that this has been done.
But then the big thing that starts happening is we start coming up with other technology. We get Ethereum that comes out, and you can start doing what we would call on-chain contracts. We can start having contracts between two people signed with their own personal keys that could unlock a message, an email, could unlock a wallet with currency in it.
Yeah, I think Bitcoin very much proved as a basis. What if you had something that was controlled by the network, not one single entity? What if you could solve money in this? And that's the principle of Bitcoin was very much, we are money evolved, right? But obviously there were some things that Bitcoin couldn't do at the time. Then, as you mentioned, smart contracts, the idea of if this happens, then do this, right? So if Artie owes me $20, then, on the 15th of the month, pay Artie $20, or you pay me $20, right? So Ethereum, one of the early ones that then grew up in 2015, I believe, Ethereum then said, what if you were able to build logic into these contracts? So instead of it being just Bitcoin transfers between people, it could be that, in the context where every month you owe this person money, great, you can now build this in every 30 days, send this amount of money. That's not possible at the time on Bitcoin. Ethereum then decided there was so many more things, right? So we could collectively agree that, say, in the Bermuda context, we all agree that we actually want to fund this new idea, right? It's going to cost $1,000 and each of us is going to put in 100. We will each fund one wallet, and only at the point that it hits $1,000 is it then released to the person that's going to build it. Until that happens,
that example,
it
just protects the investor.
Exactly. Crowdfunding done in a decentralized manner. So things like this grew up. You had Ethereum, which was smart contracts and the ability to build, programmable money in a more complicated sense. You had a few others at the time. I mean, you mentioned Monero. It was one of the ones that was meant to be, what if there was privacy included?
Yeah. And to be clear, cryptocurrency does have a built-in level, as we said, of security, but the blockchain is basically public knowledge. So once you start unraveling, hey, that wallet belongs to Artie, or that wallet belongs to, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, it's not horrendously hard.
You can figure out a few more things.
To track cryptocurrency. But at the same time, and I will fast forward through this a little bit because I want to get to how these things are transforming businesses today. But obviously, we can geek out on some of this stuff forever. But
as we will over many a coffee,
right, and many beers.
Beers.
But you'd have other Zcash, I think, was one of them. Monero. These were hyper focused on what maybe one of the core tenets of Bitcoin was back when it was first generated. Of take this technology, but also make it hyper private.
And maybe, setting the stage again, it's the early days were Bitcoin up till about 2014, 2015 was really when there started to be a few more innovations. We had at the time Ethereum and others. And then if you fast forward to maybe 2018 as well, that's when we really saw a big explosion of people launching their own coins, right? The initial coin offering
wave, right?
Yeah. Which was a new way of, in our example of what if you crowdfunded a whole new idea? This is something that's brand new. A lot of interesting ideas, not a lot of execution. Some of the ones that did come out that time are still around today and they've done very well. But then you also had the era then 2018, fast forward, we had a little bit of a bear market. People really went back to saying, all right, what if we just build on Ethereum? Well, it's proven itself over a long time in crypto. 2020 came around and we had the world of decentralized finance or DeFi. And the whole principle then was, okay, now that Ethereum has proven itself over the years, what if you built in existing financial markets? So all of a sudden you had things like a group called Aave, which essentially was just a lending market. If I hold some Ethereum on chain, then I want to deposit this and then someone can borrow this from me and they're going to pay me. Same way that you would imagine it from a traditional financial institution, but lower fees, all of it done on this network that isn't controlled by any one person. And you know that you're trusting in the code. And again, these things audited, verified over the years, the security has gotten much, much better. But essentially,
and when we say audited, verified, I think it's important to unpack a little bit of that to say it's not only relying on, in Bermuda, we live and breathe by some of the big fours here, Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, EY. I don't want to leave one of their names out. But, we have the big four. We have the smaller guys like Grant Thornton coming up. But typically when we say audited in the traditional cryptocurrency sense, it's that these chains are all publicly available.
Right.
And there's tools now where you can go through either manually by hand or use a tool to do so and verify that transaction A actually was settled and accepted by the decentralized block, approved cryptographically and released.
Yep.
And it's all trackable.
All trackable, all auditable. And that's the thing is that, it's not meant in a manner where it's meant to be, this is some, as much the media picked up on, this isn't meant to be some super shady criminal enterprise that's using Bitcoin to launder money. It's actually remarkably transparent, openly auditable, and anyone can get access to the system and then transparently can pass funds where they need, right? Now, as you noted, that obviously comes with the question of, not everyone wants to have every transaction out there, which brings us also then into this era of stablecoins, right? And so in 2020, we had the growth of decentralized finance, we had lending markets, you had yield, you had a huge amount of very interesting things that were built around then. But the principle was still that I'm using these cryptographically created assets like Ethereum that are volatile. And that was an issue, right? And so over the years...
Yeah, obviously, all these assets have value that me and you and 5 million other people assign to them. So
yeah, you're holding on to this. You're hoping that these may go up in value. You believe this to be an investment, but you don't want to necessarily be holding an investment as a payment vehicle.
Right. We're like that, and not to unlock the psychology of money, but just to touch on a little bit, that's exactly where we are today with the US dollar or the euro. We believe it has value. We believe Bitcoin has value. Now, the market has pegged Bitcoin to a US dollar or a euro or a pound denomination, but we've moved past the theory that we have to have gold bullion sitting in Fort Knox to back every US dollar out there. That's gone. And we're now trading currencies with value that we decide they are, and the market sets these pricing. And to your point, the volatility has been some of the negative on crypto. Cool. We'll skip past that for a minute. We now have smart contracts. We now have Ethereum, and now we now have stablecoin. So I'm super curious on how you're watching those tech influence. We're in Bermuda. We have reinsurance. We have banking. These are global industries that have headquarters like down the street from where me and you are sitting right now.
Right.
How are we seeing that influence those markets? And how is it also coming down to, as you're working with the Bermuda government on local payments, like where are these things kind of hitting home for us today?
So I think the big thing to maybe just the lessons learned from the decade of cryptocurrencies was that these open decentralized networks are really good at making sure that you don't end up with banking delays. You don't have to worry about getting caught up in the payments mess that is today, right? And I think what was then recognized was that all of that's wonderful, but we don't want to use these volatile assets. So what if we took the best of both worlds and we had the US dollar represented on these networks that could then be passed interchangeably?
Certainly much more stable than watching Bitcoin go up $20,000 in a quarter.
Exactly. And Bitcoin accounting, it would be a nightmare for people. For most small businesses, it doesn't make sense for you to use that as a transaction method off the bat if you're just getting into the space, because you just want to say this coffee at Brew was $10. I just want to pay $10. I don't want to think in terms of how much Bitcoin that is. That gets complicated, that it cost me more or less than it did the day before.
Right.
So stablecoins enter the ecosystem a couple years back. And one of the big ones to give a shout out to is Circle, who are licensed locally in Bermuda. They have their DABA license and they've issued USDC.
You want to unpack DABA just for
Yeah. So what we were saying around DABA is essentially the Digital Asset Business Act that we mentioned before. Essentially is just the licensing that is run in Bermuda locally under the Bermuda Monetary Authority. And
So the government, the BMA said, look, these companies are licensed to do business here.
Yeah, it's look, the BMA do a wonderful job of vetting firms that are coming in here. And if you do make your way through the licensing process in Bermuda, it's certainly showing that the BMA has asked a lot of questions and your
Very
answers
thorough.
have been acceptable.
Right.
They're very thorough. They're a well-respected regulator. Externally to digital assets, they've done a lot of work across the insurance space. And they've also now obviously leaned into digital assets and understanding that very well. And globally, the BMA, I would say, is certainly seen as a regulator that understands the space very well.
Sure.
So
we get someone like Circle and Tether who land in Bermuda with a stable coin.
Circle's license. Tether doesn't hold their license here, but Circle,
they're a technology out there.
Exactly. So, some of the big names in crypto have made their way through. Circle is licensed here. Coinbase, Kraken, Zero Hash, and
these
others.
are one-to-one pegged with the US dollar.
Exactly. So
one
Circle,
USDC token is worth $1 US.
Exactly. So Circle holds, I think the market cap is somewhere around $80 billion of USDC, meaning that Circle holds an equivalent amount in a bank account that is verified and audited. So you know that if you ever took one USDC and went back and said,
there's a dollar out there somewhere.
I want $1 in my bank account, then instead you could redeem it.
Right.
Now, I make the comparison again to why would you go back to using fax versus email? The reality is not everyone has email right now.
Sure.
And I think that's the piece we're at in terms of where you're saying in Bermuda, this stablecoin push that we're doing is because we believe that if we can help folks see the advantages of stablecoins, such that these representations of digital dollars, always redeemable, are then transactable locally, means that you're saving businesses a huge amount on their credit card fees, as we spoke about at the beginning.
Transactional fees.
You make it so much easier. You're then able to actually have more auditable reconciliation. We've worked with local groups that their accountants actually love this because all of a sudden your reconciliation is all programmatic. It's not needing to be done across multiple systems, multiple banks. It's actually done in a very clean, seamless manner.
I think
I'm the son of an accountant, so I've gone through this process with my dad as well.
That says a lot.
as is Karem, my other business partner at Penrose. He also, both his parents are accountants. So we've made it through the gamut with our families.
Right.
Now we can explain it to everyone else.
So I'm a business here. I'm transacting in US dollars right now.
Mm-hmm.
I see, of course, just if I'm realistic, I see less utility with stable coins or cryptocurrency in market, although I would love to accept it. And that's one thing that, me and you have talked about before, is accepting payments. Even if 5% of our customers pay us in crypto, I think it's a smart thing. It's a good hedge, right?
And when you say that as well, you're saying, for example, just for the audience as well, obviously that could be accepting USDC. You're just receiving this as
correct
digital dollars. Again, no worries about volatility, just an easier, seamless way to pay Artie for 100%, services
100%.
Given.
Quicker, easier, cheaper.
Yep. And secure.
Which I guess, to be fair to your comment, we almost take for granted nowadays, but we'll skip past that one. But the international settlement, I think, is just where cryptocurrency just completely leaves the other options in the dust.
For sure. And if you look at the reinsurance industry is a great example here, right? There are around $2 trillion is settled every year through the Bermudian reinsurance markets, I believe. The number may go up, may go down, but certainly it's a significant amount of money. And when you look at these firms and the transactions that are made internationally, good example is also the Corporate Income Tax Act that took place this year, right? If you are a company that makes above $750 million, you now have to pay the minimum tax into the Bermuda government. Now, the process of paying millions of dollars in taxes is, by all the conversations we've had, complicated, expensive, cumbersome, and with a lot of checks and balances to make sure that this money actually ends up exactly where it should be.
Right. I mean, who wants to be the person or persons verifying a $50 million transaction? It must touch 10 different people.
It's many more than that, I'm sure. And conversely, we've seen ones that, Circle is locally licensed. They make over those amounts. So theoretically, there would be a world in which the USDC payments could also streamline these massive, massive amounts of money that are flowing into the Bermuda government. And those are fees that are then saved by the companies,
right?
Saved by the Bermuda government, and essentially now end up with the ecosystem saying, right, we understand digital dollars, and it's also then what do they do with it, right? Because, for example, some of the conversations we're having now is the average person that, when we did our conference earlier this year, the Digital Finance Forum, we did the world's first regulated compliant airdrop. Now, the airdrop simply just means that we gave everyone a wallet. We then put a QR code up on the screen. And if they scanned that QR code, they had $100 USDC.
Sean's literally giving out free money.
We gave away free money.
It was quite cool.
It was great. And so, we gave away 50,000 USDC, so 50,000 US dollars. And then those attendees could all go and spend this at our vendors on site. So we had Ashley's Lemonade, we had Little Roads Bermuda, we had Take 5, we had Novelty, our friends at Mystic Hub joined it. So there was a lot of local businesses that were down. And essentially it would be, scan a QR code, pay the money, see it go through auditably, and you're done, right? So folks might be saying, well, don't we have digital payments already? But the reality is, again, as we just talked about earlier, if you're paying through the card, the businesses are paying huge fees. Sure. There are delays. There's so much more to it.
Right.
Now, the missing piece then is how do we make sure that folks can continue to use this? How do you get more USDC? How do you continue having this in the ecosystem? And that's where it's now becoming this network effect of folks that are now onboarding, like Ashley's Lemonade, as I mentioned, who have been accepting and are still accepting USDC. They hopefully can now go take this and then pay things like TCD payments. How do they then go and pay social insurance, right? So I think a lot of the piece has now been, we've done a lot of the initial education. We've now worked with folks to get the wallets up and running. We'll be doing our conference again next year in May from the 11th to the 15th. And that week, again, we'll be in the weeks leading up, we'll actually be doing more airdrops, getting more folks onboarded. So for those that want to get more free money, again, you can actually spend this. You can actually use this in Bermuda. This isn't us just making up, fake airline points. It's you could redeem this for dollars in your bank account if you'd like, or you can keep it in your wallet and continue to buy at these local businesses and save everyone money.
I have a lot of fake airline points that I'm trying my hardest to use, but because of the airline I'm on, it's difficult to try to find
exactly. And so, I make that comparison purely because I think people sometimes think that these are just kind of points gathered that may not be effectively useful.
Real currency.
It is real money that can then be transmitted digitally to whatever you need to do
100%.
Around the world.
I think one of the challenging things, and I don't know if Bermuda solved this yet, and I'm super curious to hear where we are. We call it onboarding and offboarding, on-ramping, off-ramping. I think I've heard 3 or 4 different terms. I have $1,000 US dollars, Bermudian dollars here in Bermuda, and I want to go buy Bitcoin, Ethereum. We can go into Ripple and XRP. I want to go buy USDC because I want to go to Ash's Lemonade and support them through cryptocurrency and save them 3% on transaction fees. Where are we today? And a lot of people who have been in the crypto space for a long time, these are extremely familiar topics because around the world, this is, I think, still difficult, still harder than it needs to be.
Right. Absolutely.
There are some things out there. I don't think Bermuda has many or any, where you have like Bitcoin ATMs where I can go take my wallet. Coinbase has a great wallet, which I actually use. Go to an ATM, give it $100, tap, scan a QR code, and get $100 worth of Bitcoin onto my phone, or $100 of USDC. Where's Bermuda today in trying to get onboarding and offboarding done?
Right. So the on-off ramping essentially just is turning dollars in a bank account into dollars on chain, right? Sure. On a blockchain network. And so today it has been a challenge, right? It has traditionally been, Bermuda banks are seen as very conservative, very slow moving because they want to make sure they get their risk equivalents right. I don't fault them for being slow moving, but I do think that we do need to get to a point where the banks are much more accepting of the digital dollar space. Again, everyone can have their views on Bitcoin, Ethereum, others. This is definitely not investment advice, but certainly it should be an open access system for USDC to allow people to get digital dollars. Where we're at now is, the banking system here does need some upgrades. We've had some great conversations with different banks around being able to enable those on-off ramping. As you mentioned, you can use, for example, the Coinbase wallet that we had everyone set up with for the conference. You can actually go directly on there. You can purchase in the wallet. You can put the credit card in. You can buy USDC. It is an expensive process through the Coinbase wallet specifically, just because it's done in a
traditional banking sense, almost.
Exactly. It's
right.
Credit card fees are charging a high amount.
So I can do a bank transfer, which is again one thing we're trying to avoid. It's slow.
You could, for example, you can get yourself an account with Coinbase, with Kraken, with one of these licensed exchanges on island. You can then do a bank transfer in there. And then from there, you can transmit the money wherever you want, right? Like once you get it on chain, your money is yours to do with as you desire.
And a lot easier to deal with. But
exactly.
Again, I have to go through some friction.
There's a little bit of friction, and there's some choke points in terms of getting money on there. But again, my advice would be go through the process with getting a Coinbase account, go onto Kraken, go get yourselves a license and set up. Sorry, not license. No one here needs to go get a DABA license, but certainly, you and I can go sign up to these exchanges, get an account, connect to bank, and should be able to get on.
And I've seen a decent amount of literature from you guys specifically on how best to navigate some of these problems.
Yeah, and we're more than happy to have conversations. We will be putting out an on-ramping webinar, as it were, in the coming weeks. Our goal is to show people how they can make it much more seamless for them. But the best advice I would say is, start learning up on the space, download the wallet, at least get comfortable with what it looks like, because I think the future is clearly going digital. We need to help people get understanding what is going to take place here, because how can they benefit from this? And it does mean, again, that at the end of the day, it's better payments, more seamless, more secure, and allows for Bermudians to save money each and every day. And I think that's the key piece, is that people confuse this with crypto and speculation and investment. There's certainly a whole world that we can get into around the investment piece, but for just folks going about their
transactional,
this is the best solution that we've seen globally.
I have utilities. I pay Belco, I pay OneCom, I also have a Digicel phone.
Yeah.
I have to pay utilities here. I have to go buy groceries. And I think what I love is watching you guys in particular and the government really pushing hard to try to figure out how to make these things happen without unnecessarily. And, you could say a lot of things about the Trump administration, but one thing has been they're a lot more crypto friendly than we've seen in past administrations. And I don't know if you're seeing, though there are some European countries who are, Liechtenstein has always come up, Estonia, as being super forward.
Right.
Are you seeing the same level of push that maybe you started to see in America with the European countries, the UK?
Certainly, I think the smaller countries will always be willing to work with these new technologies, right? As
Bermuda's leading the way.
Bermuda's doing a wonderful job overall. We think, we've seen as well, as you mentioned, Estonia has done a lot of great work. Singapore has been really top of mind for folks. Malta is another one. The UAE has a massive scene there. And then we have seen, some progress in the US and Canada more recently. Again, living between Bermuda and Montreal, we see a lot of the Canadian ecosystem beginning to wake up to this.
Sure.
Many years ago, Ethereum was built in Canada. So I do think that it's, the developers are all Canadian.
Yeah,
so,
fair.
we want to help bring this around to more folks.
Right.
But, I think, are we seeing more? Look, I think the world is waking up. The digital assets make sense. They understand that this is just an evolution of the internet, an evolution of money, frankly, that makes it easier for everyone to go about their day-to-day lives.
Right.
And I think that's the key piece is, we spoke very briefly earlier off record before about some of the things that are happening beyond payments. There's a whole world that we could get into in terms of how there are crypto companies that are able to improve the internet and give better data service. There's ones that are helping people store
DNS as an example. DNS on chain is a incredible thing.
Yeah, store files on chain in a manner that will always be accessible to you, but securely stored and private from others, right? Solving, issues with global Cloudflare outages, having an internet that's built to withstand future disruptions, and especially with the wave of AI coming. I think that's where you're now seeing that blockchains themselves and this technology provides a layer of trust for the internet that we've never had before.
Yeah.
And in the future world of where does this technology look to be applied, I do think we'll see one in which, you see a lot of talk about fake news and AI generated images. I do think that there will be a world in which you use these blockchain based verifications to guarantee that an image is a real life photograph. Right. All of a sudden you can actually certify.
How do I know that this AI generated thing
exactly
actually it's AI, partially AI?
Exactly. Right. And I think the bigger question of where this goes philosophically is that blockchain might be the way that we as a species are able to guarantee trust in a future that is AI enabled.
Sure. Where are you seeing, and Bermuda may be here, we may not be. I remember seeing it in the sports world a bit. But certainly people who are making, decent revenue, they're famous. They, maybe they're in international finance, maybe they're playing professional sports.
Mm-hmm.
Are we starting to see, there are some examples I could remember from 5-10 years ago. Are we starting to see people starting to receive their paychecks in crypto? I'm sure the crypto companies are doing the best they can, but is this starting? I haven't seen a lot of it recently. Is it becoming a thing more? Is it out there?
It is. And certainly I think, we've seen, the USDC payments, stablecoin payments are becoming much, much more common. Folks are accepting digital dollars because it's easier. There's also
do they
big
like it
folks.
because just so I know if I make $5,000 a month, I'm getting $5,000
Exactly.
in dollars.
And that's the thing is, when you look at, for example, like if you get $5,000, you then wire it overseas, then you transact into the local currency. You'd be lucky if you're not losing 7 to 8% on those total transactions on that amount, right? You'll know better
Inter-country
than me.
settlement
Yeah.
is a nightmare.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing is like the costs add up. It's all money coming out of Bermudian businesses. This is a way we can better create an open, inclusive financial ecosystem. Settlement in payroll. Yeah. So I think, as we were saying, USDC is an easy way for folks to receive salary. That means that, for every dollar that's being sent to them, they get most of those dollars rather than it being, huge fees carved out.
Right.
I think also folks have been taking money in Bitcoin as well. You actually have folks taking that mostly that are willing to take, maybe above and beyond their necessary expenses on a monthly basis. They might take it in Bitcoin. They believe in it as a long-term saving tool. Again, this isn't certainly investment advice, but personally speaking, over the years, I've seen the growth of Bitcoin as a way to have a store of value in the long run that isn't impacted by additional money printing by the US government, right? The idea that your savings should not be degraded because people printed more money. Bitcoin is an avenue for this, right? And so personally, I've held some Bitcoin over the years. And then comparatively also, I think folks are looking at the digital dollar space. I think when we take a big step back from even just the Bermuda ecosystem, globally speaking, there's a lot of places around the world where you can't access US dollars. You might be stuck by local currency regulations that are subject to hyperinflation, that you're seeing a lot of disgruntlement with local governments, right? Like, I was flying through Istanbul last month for a conference, and the Turkish lira over the past 10 years has decreased in value by something like 80%.
Just hyperinflation.
Just inflation and government printing. So if you as a citizen are then holding your life savings that you've earned over decades in this local currency and you're unable to hold this in US dollars, well, you've just lost decades worth of savings.
I was really surprised in seeing, I think it's in Africa. There are maybe whole communities who run, this is basically way before cryptocurrency became a thing. Mm-hmm. They transact with each other using dollars or local currency with their telecom provider.
Yeah, like the M-Pesa was.
And they
was
trade back and forth.
Yeah,
maybe it's the same in South America.
But that's the thing is where folks are. I think where we are lucky sitting in the Western world, being able to have the guarantee that the U.S. dollar will be as stable as it can be at this time. But we're not dealing with the currency fluctuations with local currencies. I think a lot of this is, where do we see the future of stablecoins? Certainly, it saves us money, and I think it will be a huge benefit to the Bermudian ecosystem. And then when we scale that up globally, that if everyone is able to save on these fees, it also means that you have folks around the world with access to the US dollar, access to these new products, that you can have a single mother in Southeast Asia, some farmer in Africa, you can have a new entrepreneur in Latin America that instead of having to save in their local currency and hoping the government doesn't print a bunch of money, they have access to US dollars in a seamless manner through the use of these digital asset payments, right? And that now means that, they have investment opportunities that have never before been available to them. If you, as one of those examples, wanted to also put some money aside into something like the US stock market, this was never something that you would have been able to do. And you're missing out on the opportunities for investment in the long run. So all of a sudden, you're holding your savings in these local currencies that may or may not survive in the long run.
Yeah,
it's problematic for them versus being able to now, through this technology, you can actually save this for the long run, and you are now able to benefit from the same advantages that the Western world has for decades.
Yeah, we're very spoiled. And until you start traveling to second and third world countries, which I've only been to a handful, you don't realize the stability of our financial system. And it is quite eye-opening. I visited Jamaica briefly, and in the years I was there, their Jamaican dollar went from 1 to 80 US to 1 to 160 US in a few years. One thing I want to touch on before we start to wrap: where is the tech side of this sitting? Smart contracts. Where would you like to see more adoption? Either local, small to medium to large businesses, international business in Bermuda. What are the cool things coming around the turn? We talk about things obviously in the IT space, which I sit in. We briefly talked about it. DNS is a big one. Files on chain.
Mm-hmm.
What are the other cool things coming out there for, from real estate to compliance to banking?
Yeah, I think there's, oh man, you're right. We could riff for hours here. But I mean, I think some of the interesting ones are also, let's first stages is if we get payments right, all of a sudden you have a population that understands digital payments, can hold this on chain, can utilize this in a seamless manner.
That needs to be the ground floor.
It could be, like to give an example, you've got folks like the marketplace is a good example as a grocer, right? The largest private employer on the island, they obviously are intrinsic to the economy as the place where everyone goes and gets food and groceries,
sure.
Right? And, if we can get grocery stores to start being more open to accepting this, their margins are already massively thin. So if they're able to shave off some credit card processing fees, they benefit. They can offer savings to customers.
Right, totally.
It helps with the cost of living.
Right.
Take that a step further. Then it's what if payroll is provided in this, right? It's just the savings begin to add up. But beyond that, I think then there's the things of looking at, there is definitely ways that we can have blockchain-based systems for digital identity, right? And, for those who have unfortunately gone through the onboarding.
We haven't even talked about digital ID. I love digital. I spent 2 minutes on digital ID.
You
fantastic.
There's certainly, look at it. I'm curious about it. I think there's some fantastic experts in the space on this, but really digital ID is, I think, where Bermuda can really cement itself out as a nation state case study. But really, digital identity can be done in a way that you and I own all of the credentials that are attached to our name. I, Sean Stapley, I went to this school, I graduated this year, I've done this on my resume. Having all of that in a seamless manner that's basically a digital wallet that attests that. Take the example of,
It's private, but it's verified
security,
on chain.
Exactly. So
right.
for me,
and even for a crypto person, my whole life.
Oh, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to try and onboard with different banks as well.
But also that's, I think my point with that was even that to me is a jump in logic.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, in the last 15 years in cryptocurrency. Now I'm talking about taking my personal identification,
mm-hmm.
owning it. It's mine. I hold the key to it. But I can also, instead of having to walk around with a passport and all these things that are, still there's a lot of friction with them.
It's a digitization of the existing infrastructure.
Right.
So you think of, for example, let's say you're looking to onboard with different banks. You hold some with HSBC, with BCB, Clarion, whatever it may be. It is a nightmare to go and transmit all the same documents between each of them. Versus if I can say, I grant you access to just these documents.
It's verified by the government.
Here you go.
As maybe the central file.
Here's my driver's license. It has been verified by the Bermuda government. Mm-hmm. Here I'm now transmitting this, right?
Right.
And in the same manner.
I don't have to go fill the same forms out.
Over
and over and over again.
And it saves the administrative hassle. It's better for civil service employees.
Right.
It reduces the burden on everyone. And it's done in a secure manner. And if you were to then say, you change your bank, you're taking it back, right? You then retract the information and they don't now have that access to that information, right?
Yeah,
so
of course.
Same way as, there's ways to build digital ID that are privacy preserving as well. Because like you said, we don't want our information fully out there.
Right.
A good example is it's possible with these wallets that, if I'm showing my ID to a bar in order to get in, they don't need to know my exact birthday. They just need to know, am I over 18?
Of course.
So there's a whole world in which you can
21 for Americans.
21 for Americans, yes. And so, if I'm able to now start scaling this up, it's what if you can have ways that businesses and individuals can use this as a way to verify information without necessarily showing all of it. This, I think, is a whole new world called zero knowledge proofs. The idea of if you can show zero knowledge or zero actual information about it, but verify something's true. The example of the age is a good one. But for example, it could also be, you as already paying your taxes, did you or did you not pay? You can then certify that, yes, this payment was made. No one else needs to know how much was it, what was the amount, when was it paid?
Income verification.
Exactly. It can be income verification. It can be identity.
Right.
It could be for the average civil servant that wants to consider a job change internally with the Bermuda government. Now you have all your accreditations, all of your jobs, all of your education. You then can find a way to easily and seamlessly apply. That now means we can have better educational comparison internally with the government.
Right.
And all of a sudden you can have someone in TCD is remarkably well skilled actually for the Ministry of Finance, but now there's an easy man for them to figure that out.
Sure.
Right. So things like that, I think it's, same thing like school kids are a great example where you're now accumulating years and years of experience. You're about to apply to Bermuda College. How do you seamlessly apply using this?
Right.
There's ways using these wallets that we'd love to see where folks can say,
My
my
education
identity
is
here.
on chain.
Exactly. And in a privacy preserving way, especially for minors, to make sure they're safe, but can be done to welcome them into a digital era. And I think that's where a lot
I
of
think
these
anyone who's
technologies-
applied for universities
That was a nightmare.
when I was applying for med school, I probably applied for 30,
I remember,
and a lot of them were
same
paper.
stuff. Yeah.
I mean, of course, this was 20 something years ago, but it was paper back then. And I would be surprised if maybe they're not paper nowadays, they're electronic, but still I have to fill the
still a
same
lot,
format over and over and over and over again.
And I think that's the best example. I always say this when I'm talking about, like, I don't want to ever sound like crypto is this magic solution. It's certainly, like, there are benefits to this technology applied in a meaningful and appropriate way. And I think the biggest thing that we can say with this is any system that involves a level of trust on the internet, there's a way in which you can apply blockchain that likely makes it easier for everyone involved.
Sure.
And I think that's the key thing I would say for those looking to get involved. I mean, number one, come have a conversation with us. We're always happy to have a chat. If you want to get up and running with a wallet, if you're a Bermudian business that wants to accept digital payments, please reach out. We'd love to help get you onboarded. And then I think the biggest thing is always come to the conference. Every year we've been doing this now it's been 7 years with Penrose, where we've hosted the International Tech Summit, which has now become the Digital Finance Forum.
Yeah, it's really grown.
And
I've been really excited to see it, especially, obviously having my heart in the space.
Of course. And so thank you for the support over the years. But we'd love to have everyone come out. It's May 11th to 15th next year in 2026. For us, we will be doing another airdrop, getting more folks up and running with their wallets. And really it's to figure out what's the next step for Bermuda. And we do think that digital payments have the opportunity to revolutionize this, not only for the everyday person, but for the island as a whole.
Got a few minutes. I'd love to hear where's Sean in 5 years. And then we could talk business in Bermuda as 2 and 3. But give me Sean in 5 years.
Sean in 5 years. Oh God. Yeah, well,
You're newly married.
Newly married. So hopefully in a few years, a few kids. Hopefully,
sure.
Working on that.
Bouncing between Montreal and Bermuda.
I mean, listen, Bermuda's home for me. So I've primarily based out of Bermuda. Travel a decent amount for conferences and engagements.
You guys
around
are on the road.
It's been a lot, and we love it. We do love it. Again, I'm based between Bermuda and Montreal. Karem is based in Bermuda. G Clay, our third partner, is over in the US. Our CMO Lorna is over in London, and then we have a variety of associates in 6 to 7 countries, depending on who's traveling where for a conference. So Penrose as a whole, the goal for us is really to continue enabling. How does Bermuda become the world's first jurisdiction that really gets it right for on-chain finance? But I think for me, it's really how can I, as someone born and raised here, to figure out a way to give back to the island.
Right.
I think the most interesting pieces that we can do for the next 5 years is, as you were saying, take it above and beyond finance. There's more to this. There's identity. There's being able to do, for example, absentee voting is a thing that you could figure out.
Great.
Right.
Great.
And
it's hot right now in the political climate.
Yep.
Both sides, OBA, PLP are talking about it.
Exactly. And so I think fixing absentee voting to make sure that everyone has an equal right of access. I think figuring out better ways to streamline the Bermuda government and make it so that these everyday actions are much easier. And, beyond that, I think the opportunity really is we're continuing to drive investment and opportunities for folks here. And I think we would love to figure out some way to get more investment locally, more jobs, or more companies to get licensed here. Because at the end of the day, I think Bermuda is remarkably well positioned between the regulator that understands crypto and digital assets at a high level, and at the very technical level, you have the pro-innovation government that's willing and able to get involved with this, and you have a remarkable amount of talent from all of the international companies that are based here, both hiring expats and locals that are able to basically have this ecosystem truly built for innovation.
So in 5 years, if I were to try to forecast Bermuda in 5 years, we want to get local payments figured out.
Yep.
We want to get people onboarded.
Mm-hmm.
We want to get businesses to start using crypto a bit more. The government is pushing in that direction. Where would you want to see Bermuda in 5 years? As a capstone. Hey, in 5 years, the end of my paper as I graduate from Bermuda in 5 years in the crypto space. Where are we?
I think the payment for the payments for us, I think 100% 5 years from now, we should have every payment done in an on-chain manner that is entirely transmitted using this technology. Because it's better, it's seamless, it's faster, it's cheaper. We can show ourselves as the first jurisdiction that has managed to achieve 100% market penetration, because we've shown this already that it is a better solution. I think other than that, the other opportunities though really are also Bermuda as a whole should be seen as the go-to digital asset jurisdiction for companies internationally. I think we're getting there. The BDA has done some good work. The BMA is obviously out there speaking. Premier Burt has traveled extensively over his tenure. So, we will continue to push Bermuda as a jurisdiction. I think our goal should be the first nation state that's onboarded and on-chain entirely. And I think it would be also incredible for us to really have the opportunity then for the investment opportunities for Bermudians, right?
Sure.
We talked earlier around the tokenization piece, and we didn't touch too much on that, but the idea of, the average everyday Bermudian with access to this on-chain digital dollars, they could then easily buy a piece of a building. They can buy real estate in a more seamless manner.
I love that concept.
It allows for Bermuda to be owned by Bermudians.
It's democratization of assets to an extent.
Exactly. And it means that instead of trying to buy, this building of Innovation House where we're sitting, instead of trying to buy Innovation House, you could buy 1/10,000th of it and contribute to saying like, yep, I believe in Bermuda. I want to put my money in real estate.
Right.
I want to find a better way to make this happen. I think this is where we should be seen as an innovative jurisdiction that can actually bring about these new technologies in a way that's responsible, secure, and actually sets us up for the next 50 years, right? We did this with insurance 50, 60 years ago, built a reinsurance titan of the world. And right now we're poised for over the next few decades to figure this out with digital assets.
For a new pillar of the country.
Exactly.
Sean, it's been awesome.
Thank you for having me, Artie. It's great.
Love pre and post conversations with you, but thanks for coming on the show. And I really appreciate your time. And I'll leave some notes for people to contact you. They can reach out to Penrose. You're not extremely hard to find. But,
I'm not. You can find me pretty much on bouncing between front streets, bouncing between cafes on Front Street, onboarding new businesses.
Yeah,
so
great.
Come say hi.
Thank you for joining the conversation on business and technology in Bermuda. If you found value in today's discussion, share it with your team. Keep building, keep leading, and we'll see you next time.